Do you need help in your business? Do you need help understanding how to grow and scale and profitably build your company into the business that you want it to be? Well, you're in luck. I have been working for the past 3.5, almost 4 years now with some of the most successful real estate investors from around the country, among them Andy McFarland and Bill Allen. And we've developed a program called 7-Figure Flipping. 7-Figure Flipping is a mastermind coaching and mentoring program designed to get you and your business to the next level. If you're interested in finding out more and want to know how you can get involved, shoot me an email at mike@juststartrealestate.com, subject line help, and I will get a hold of you. We'll hop on the phone and we'll talk about it. If it's right for you, I'll let you know. If it's not right for you and your business at this point, I'll let you know that too. But at the very least, you'll find out if it's a good fit. So shoot me an email at mike@juststartrealestate.com and let's talk. All right, on with the show.
We got a handful of yeses, so we turned 5 units that year, 5 additional units that year into Airbnbs, and they all vastly outperformed what we were paying for them on a monthly basis.
Okay, let me stop you there, because what you do...
You're listening to the Just Start Real Estate Podcast. If you're serious about your real estate investing business and need real answers, you are in the right place. And now, your host, Mike Simmons.
All right, guys, thank you for joining me here on Just Start Real Estate. I appreciate you being here. As I always say, I know that there are a lot of options out there. There are a lot of things you can do to spend your time and ways that you can improve, and I appreciate the fact that you're spending it here with me, and that's not overlooked, guys. It's very much appreciated, and I'm humbled by it. So thank you for being here. I am really excited to be involved in this particular episode. I've got a guest on that I think you all are going to be super excited about. I know I am. I really enjoy having all my guests on, but there are certain guests that have expertise or things that they're doing in real estate that I'm particularly interested in, and this guest is no exception. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Eric Dukic. I'm sorry, Eric. I said Eric. I knew the last name was what I was worried about, and then I did the first name. Amir Dukic. I'm just focused on that last name because I knew I was going to screw it up, and I didn't. But Amir, listen. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No worries. Thanks for having me on. Call me Eric. It's not that unusual. Autocorrect always changes my name from Amir to Eric. So,
all right, I'm going to say it autocorrected. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to say it autocorrected, but it's my stupid handwriting. I'm so focused on not screwing up your last name, I messed up your first one. So, Murphy's Law, right?
No worries at all.
All right.
No worries at all.
Amir, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate it. You work. The model that you do in real estate is Airbnb. It's an Airbnb model. You and your wife have been insanely successful doing this, and it's something that I've kind of had it on my whiteboard. I have it in my notepad. Like everywhere that I put goals and things in my business, I have written down like figure out Airbnb, like get it figured out. And I always stop myself because there's so much I don't know about how to do it right that I just push it off because I know other things that I can do. I already know how to do them, and that's what I focus on. But I've written this down. I even wrote just even a month ago, I wrote to my assistant who I just hired a few months ago. I said, remind me when I was out of town. I said, remind me when I get back to figure out Airbnb, because somebody was talking about it at a retreat we were doing for 8-Figure Flipping. So I'm super excited to have you on the show, man. I'm really psyched to dive into this and really understand your business. So thank you again. And if you don't mind, tell everyone a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into this model.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mike, thanks again for having me. I'm excited to kind of share my journey and educate everyone else on the opportunities that are available in the Airbnb or short-term rental world. I am based in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been here for about 15 years now. Initially was a civil engineer, did that for a while, didn't enjoy it. Joined a startup, a technology startup in Charlotte. That company was acquired by NBC Sports 3 or so years ago. So at that time period, I joined NBC, but I was thinking, what do I want to do next? And I realized that I had a business opportunity in my backyard. And what I mean by that is my wife and I purchased a home here in Charlotte where we live that had a detached garage and a room above that garage with a bathroom. I was going to make it my man cave, but I have 2 kids. I had 2 kids at that point. I have a third now, and that was never going to go over well with my wife. And I don't blame her. Being in a separate dwelling, basically, it was just not fair, right? So we decided to turn it. We were going to turn it into a long-term rental at first, but because there was no kitchen, we didn't think there was going to be as much value from having a long-term rental. So we decided to make it an Airbnb just to see how it would do. So we put some nice furniture into the place and put it in Airbnb and marketed it. What Airbnb really is Airbnb is just a marketplace for you to list your home as a short-term rental, not too different from Zillow or any real MLS site, right? You just list it there, and then potential customers, in this instance, guests, reach out to you.
Okay, let me ask you real quick about that first rental, real quick. I don't know the Charlotte market, but can you tell me, and this is, I know we're going to get into this a little bit, and I want you to finish your journey here, but tell me a little bit about that rental. Where was it? What kind of a neighborhood or what kind of an area was it in? And I think this is the reason I'm asking is I think a lot of people think an Airbnb, and maybe this is true. This is one of my limiting beliefs, maybe, that they have to be sort of like on the beach or like in this unbelievable location. Like, where was this first one? It sounds almost like it was a residential, but maybe I'm wrong.
It is. So it was a residential. We had a house that was about 2.5, 3 miles from uptown Charlotte or downtown Charlotte.
Okay.
It was a nice residential neighborhood. About a mile from the Plaza Midwood neighborhood, and Plaza Midwood neighborhood has its own little downtown, which has got a couple of breweries, a couple of bars, restaurants, a couple of shops. Right.
Okay.
So Airbnb, and it's a great question, Mike. Airbnbs are a little bit different than the traditional vacation rentals. Vacation rentals are what they are, vacation rentals. Airbnbs are more popular in urban markets like Charlotte, like Detroit, non-traditional vacation markets that have the new type of traveler, which is usually millennial travelers, or business travelers, or families that are looking to relocate elsewhere and need a place to stay to really get a sense of the neighborhood. If you're a family of 4 and you're thinking about moving to Charlotte, staying in a hotel is not ideal. You'd rather stay in a neighborhood that locals stay in, so that you can actually get an experience of what the city is truly like. So those are more of the type of guests that stay at Airbnbs. We actually, you'd also think Airbnbs would be really popular in downtowns. It's actually our most well-performing units are not in downtown itself, but within basically a 5-mile radius of downtown.
Is that because is that because of the price point? Like, is that because of the return on the investment, or is that because it's just more desirable to be a little bit outside of the downtown? You know what I mean? Like, the downtown, I assume, are more expensive, so maybe your returns are a lot lower. Is that the reason, or is it more location?
It's a combination of both. Downtown also has, a higher propensity of hotels, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And the type of homes you can acquire in downtown, there's less single family homes. It's more apartment buildings, or small multifamily buildings. And those, then we can get into is those for the most part have restrictions against short-term rentals. If you go into an apartment building that has 200 plus units, there's usually or a condominium building, there's usually some restrictions there because of HOAs.
Gotcha.
But for us, we've seen a lot more success in basically within a short radius of downtown in parts of in neighborhoods that you as a local actually want to hang out in. In Charlotte, no local actually wants to hang out in downtown Charlotte. We'd rather hang out in one of the neighborhoods surrounding it because that has more culture. It's got a better entertainment scene than downtown, which is just stuffy, full of suits and things like that. But
outsiders, people from outside of Charlotte, they don't know, like, what again, I'm limiting belief maybe, but I would assume that when people come into Michigan, they want to go, there's an event in downtown Detroit, so I want to be in downtown Detroit. They're not going to want to be in a cool suburb that I know is a very cool suburb, or like, when I say suburb, I mean, it's like a smaller town with a really cool small downtown with some breweries and things. They don't. How do you convey that? Is it a lot of it the marketing side of it? Is that a real strong component, like it making people understand why they would want to stay there as opposed to downtown Charlotte?
Correct. And I think it's also the type of travelers that utilize Airbnb. They're looking to get away from the traditional hotel space, which is found in downtown.
Yeah.
But Airbnb does a great job of allowing you as the host to do a description of what your unit looks like, your neighborhood, and to actually paint the picture of what your property and your experience would be as a traveler. So we always highlight in our descriptions of our properties, we always highlight the neighborhood and why you actually would want to stay here. But overall, the travelers themselves are becoming more educated before coming to a city like Charlotte. They don't just look at downtown Charlotte, but they look at what the surrounding neighborhoods and areas provide. Because, for example, a lot of our travelers are foodies, right? They're big into food. And the best restaurants aren't usually in downtown. The most expensive restaurants are, but the rest restaurants are in the outskirts, in the more community-based centers, basically.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that was your first one was in a subdivision. It sounds like it was in like a subdivision or a neighborhood. You converted. So how did that one do? How did it go? First of all, I assume there were some lessons learned there. And then how did that one go and where did you go from there?
Yeah, so that one went really well. It's a 300 square foot room above our garage that basically we quickly realized was able to cover the mortgage on our house. So the revenue that we're generating from this, 300 square foot room above our garage was covering the mortgage in our house on a month to month basis. So that ROI was kind of like a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Right.
Was it weird though having someone over your garage? Was that inconvenient at all, or?
It took a little bit getting used to, but then it really became a non-starter because they had their own entrance to the building. So it wasn't, we haven't done any, Airbnb, and a lot of people when they think of Airbnb from a traditional perspective is somebody staying on my spare bed. We don't do that. I have a wife and 2 kids. We wouldn't feel 3 kids now, but we wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. Ours is more from an investment perspective.
Sure. Okay.
So we did that unit again did remarkably well, and so we decided to acquire a few more properties to see if they would do equally as well. And the way we initially approached it is through a master lease model. So basically, we would go to the homeowner or to the condo owner that's looking to rent out their property, and we would say, "Hey, Mr. Smith, it looks like you're looking for a long-term rental here. I will actually offer you a premium on what you're looking for in your monthly rate. Usually we did a 10% premium initially, as long as you're okay with us turning that into an Airbnb as well. We'll pay you on the first of the month. We'll furnish it. We'll pay for all the utilities, as long as you're okay with us turning into an Airbnb." And we got a handful of yeses. So we turned 5 units that year, 5 additional units that year into Airbnbs, and they all vastly outperformed what we were paying for them on a monthly basis.
Okay, let me stop you there, because what you just said is kind of the key and the magic of what you guys do, right? I think one of the suggestions, or not suggestions, one of the objections, I should say, totally different word, of this, or one of the hurdles that people have is like, well, I don't have the money to buy all these houses. Like I might have one maybe, but how do you get 70 like you guys have, or maybe even more than that now? How do you do that? And so your whole model, like to me, the magic sauce or the differentiator and the really cool thing about it is, you just said it, they're master leases. You don't own the houses. You operate them under a master lease, and then you turn them into Airbnb. That is so incredibly brilliant because it eliminates the ceiling, or it eliminates the constraint of financing. And that's most people, that's their constraint, financing. Like, how can I do this? You don't have to buy the house. That's amazing. Let's talk about that for a minute. How did you find out that you could even do that? How did that occur to you? Or did somebody tell you, or did you research it? How did you know that?
It was a combination of research and just testing out different approaches, right? This was, 2.5 years ago. So, the real estate market was hot. And I mean, it still is here in Charlotte. And we just didn't have the capital to invest into multiple properties, but we wanted to test out this idea. So we attempted different strategies, and this is the one that resonated the most. So that's the one we initially stuck with. Is I'm a big believer in a trial and error, and just see what sticks. And that one really got some good traction. quickly.
Okay. So you mentioned it was a hot market, and so that means costs and the price of houses were high. But does a hot market why would somebody? And I'm going to ask this question because I hate this question when people ask it of wholesaling, which I do. But I'm going to ask anyway. Why would someone do this? Why wouldn't they just Airbnb themselves? And B, why would they want to offer you a master lease? You're not going to live there. They're leasing it to you, but you're not going to be there. Like, why would somebody do this? What's the motivation for the homeowner?
Well, if they would do it because, one, I'm offering them a 10% premium on their return on what they would get from a traditional long-term rental. So I gave them an incentive to do that, so their ROI is higher. So they're pocketing extra cash on a month-to-month basis. And initially, especially early on with Airbnb, Airbnbs aren't passive like traditional long-term rentals are, right?
Yeah.
Of course, with long-term rentals, you have to find a tenant. And then for the most part, it's passive. If Airbnbs, there's more turnover.
Yeah.
There's guests constantly coming and going. So you're in a sense running a hospitality operation.
Yeah.
And especially with an unknown, a lot of people are scared of that. So they prefer to just pass it on to us, generate the high return that they were planning on, and kind of move on.
Yeah.
Make it passive.
I've heard this too, and tell me if I'm wrong, but one of the ways that you can sell this, or one of the ways that you convey this to the homeowner, is a traditional rental. Somebody's going to be in there, and by the time they're done, they could have really beaten this thing up, and you have all these costs of getting it ready to rent again. But with Airbnb, essentially every couple of days or every week, there's a cleaning crew coming in and like cleaning this place and making it spotless. So week in and week out, there's no concern, or there should be no concern that this place is just getting run into the ground, right? Because it would ruin your business too.
Absolutely right. And that was a big piece of education that we had to do with the owners that we worked with, right? Is to educate them that, yes, there's more traffic coming through, but if we, as Rabu, as operators, if we don't make sure that the unit is always in tip-top shape, that will reflect in the reviews that we get for the property, which will affect in our ability to market it and charge a certain fee that we need to see the highest return. So we're highly incentivized to make sure that the unit is always in tip-top shape.
How long is a typical lease for you when you lease this master lease? What is the term?
When we first started out, it was just, again, trial and error. It was at 6 months. Now we have a couple of proposals working on now where it's up to 5 years.
Okay.
So over time, it's gradually increased in the length.
Yeah. Is there a concern? Again, I'm just going to try and think. I'm thinking a worst case scenario here, like doom and gloom.
Of course.
So you have 70. I don't know if that's the right number. I know that's the number that you had and you'd given me in a while back. But 70 of these master leases that you've Airbnb. If all of the homeowners said, "Yeah, I'm done. I want to just go ahead and sell the house," what happens then? Like your business is built on something you don't own, which is cool because you don't need to come up with the financing for it. But the downside is you don't control it necessarily. Maybe for the 5 years or for the 2 years or 3 years, whatever the master lease is for. But what if they want to sell? Like, how do you reconcile that in your business model?
Yeah, I mean, so our business model has evolved a little bit as well. We don't just currently, just to go back to one point you made, we don't just have master lease units. We've since also started managing units on behalf of property investors. So we've had property investors now come to us and say, "Hey, we actually want to participate in the upside as well." So they'll help set it up, and then they'll ask us to basically provide turnkey management services on their behalf.
Oh, okay.
So
for the homeowners.
For the homeowners, which at this point traditionally are, if you think about it, property investors, right?
Yeah.
Who are looking for a higher ROI than they would get from the traditional long-term market.
Right.
So those started engaging us to manage properties on their behalf, so they can participate in the upside, for which we charge a management fee.
Right.
For those. But yeah, I mean, the way we protect ourselves is contracts, and then also we're strategic about how far out we allow guests to book these properties.
Okay.
So if you have a contract for 12 months, we only allow 12 months ahead of time for the guest to book, so that doesn't create issues for us down the line.
Would you be interested? Like if somebody came to you and you had a really great Airbnb, one of your units was just a top performer, just great, and the people wanted to sell, is that something you'd consider buying, or would you just go, okay, great, end it and move on and go somewhere else?
We've absolutely. We haven't personally bought it yet because that's not part of our business model, but we have handed off. We've established relationships between clients that were looking to sell and potential purchasers of those properties who would be looking for the type of return that they're able to get from a short-term rental. So we have managed the same property over multiple owners. Because of the model.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's super smart. I like that, actually. So they want to sell. You help them facilitate that sale to someone who would want to kind of take over that ownership of that and take advantage of the short-term rental. That's pretty cool. I like that a lot, actually.
We're getting our sales team, Colleen, our sales team, is getting lots of inquiries from, we're getting two types of inquiries. One is property owners that have properties that they would like us to manage on their behalf. And then property investors who are looking to get into the space, who are looking for us to help them identify the right type of properties that they can purchase to turn into short-term rentals.
Gotcha.
So there's both sides of that story.
Okay. All right. So how 2 years or 2.5 years ago you started this endeavor, and now you have 70 of these units. That's pretty fast. That's a pretty fast scale up. How did you guys go from one? And then how quickly did you, I assume that it was slow in the beginning and then kind of went, faster in the end. How did you scale that up? What was your process for doing that?
Absolutely. So we started off with the one, as I mentioned, in my backyard. We, at this point, it was my wife and myself. We started thinking, okay, let's see how much we can scale this up and what we can do with this business. So we got those other 5 that I mentioned, basically, and this was in 2017. At the end of, I apologize, at the end of 2016, we got to 6 properties that we were basically had master leases on, and then our own property. And once we get to that point, we honestly realized that it's quite labor intensive, right? Because this was very early on. We were still figuring everything out. We were still doing all the guest communication manually. We were changing lock codes to the units manually. Just ensuring that doing everything ourselves. I cleaned. I can't tell you how many toilets I cleaned after guests stayed. But that was just part of understanding the business, right? Early on, I'm a firm believer in that. You need to understand every aspect of the business so that you can run it in the most efficient way. So at the beginning of 2017, that sounds right. I brought on my co-founder James Strong to be our chief technical officer. Okay. Basically, the goal of James was to come in and help build out technology in the back end that would automate most of the things that we do.
Yeah.
So be less reliant on manual labor, but more process operational driven through technology.
What kind of things can you automate?
Communication was a big one. Based on, when a guest books, we can send them a template message that says, Mike, thanks for booking. We're looking forward to hosting you in Charlotte. Look for your check-in instructions a couple of days prior to check-in.
Okay.
Then the next thing we built is we started utilizing smart home technology to automate the homes themselves. So things like the lock, the thermostat, the Wi-Fi, the energy consumption, things of that nature, so that we would be able to automatically set a code for a guest that only works for them.
Okay.
When they arrive. So, let's say you booked one of our units to arrive today at 3 p.m. We would automatically send you a code that would be the last 4 digits of your phone number. It would start working at 3 p.m. today and would stop working at 11 a.m. on the day you check out. So let's say you check out on Sunday, it would stop working at that point. That just eliminated a lot of the biggest pain points that we identified early on, which is access to the property. Yeah. And we found the best type of lock to use through a lot of trial and error. The best type of thermostat to use so that, when nobody's staying in the properties, because a well-performing property in Airbnb is about 60 to 70% occupancy.
Okay.
That's the way we structure it. We basically structure our Airbnbs that we believe that 30% occupancy, we're basically able to break even. And then anything above that is net positive revenue, right? So most of our units are right around the 60 to 70% occupancy, which means that there's still, 10 days out of the month and nobody's staying in those units. So we optimize our returns by having thermostats that are smart thermostats that when we know nobody's staying in the unit, we automatically turn those off so that we're not cooling or heating a space that's empty.
Yeah.
And then 2 hours prior to the next guest's arrival, we turn the AC or heat on to get it comfortable for the guest. So it was a lot of those like issues that you just learn through managing your own properties and trying to basically optimize every dollar that we built those type of automations out. And then the biggest challenge was really identifying and finding the proper cleaning team. So it started off my wife and I cleaning it, but then we just started finding resources that would enable anybody to become a cleaner. So daily messages that we can send to cleaners where they know what units to clean and what their code is to get into the property so that they can clean it themselves.
Does that code change? I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you. It changes for the cleaners?
Code,
okay.
Correct. So that we can, the scary thing about the Airbnb world is that most operators or most hosts have the same code for years. And that just creates a lot of security issues. So we didn't want to play in that space. We wanted to make sure that, as soon as possible, we were optimized for all those things. So our cleaners have a code that only works for them when they're supposed to clean. And then we monitor all the codes that are used throughout the day so that if we see some unusual activity, we can pinpoint it to who came.
Right.
The owners of the properties have their own codes. The management company has its own codes, things of that nature, just so that we're able to fully understand what's happening at the property without like having cameras in there, because we don't want to do that for obvious reasons in the Airbnb space. But and then the biggest, the other one that's the biggest pain point is Wi-Fi. Everything's Wi-Fi based, so we control the Wi-Fi remotely. If it goes down, we reset it, things of that nature. Because it's so core. You'd be surprised how if a unit doesn't have Wi-Fi or strong Wi-Fi, guests complain, and that can just plummet the performance of the unit. So that's the other thing that we focused on.
Well, tell me some of the things. Tell me, if you don't mind. Tell me some of the things some of the lessons learned, like Wi-Fi has to be strong, or it's going to just crush your, that unit. What are some of the things that you didn't know that you know now that can really derail a Airbnb if you don't know this? Like, what are some of those things that you went, okay, I get it now?
Honestly, the biggest one is Wi-Fi. Being in a real estate, and again, it's a different type of real estate investor. I was just trying to find the best way to give them the minimum that they needed, including, so it was usually paying for the cheapest Wi-Fi. And the second we actually enhanced the Wi-Fi, our reviews went up. We were able to charge more because everyone, especially Airbnb travelers, they're so Wi-Fi and phone reliant. That was honestly probably one of the biggest ones that we identified pretty early on is the power of having strong Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Do you guys have things like is it important, or is it completely not necessary to have things like hot tubs and some of these other amenities that are maybe a little bit more, extravagant or a little bit, better?
We don't, just because they just add maintenance and logistical issues that we don't want to deal with. So we're purposeful about, it's basic real estate, right? It's location. We're more interested in the location and the general condition of the property as opposed to amenities, because amenities usually lead to more issues and more problems to solve. Big believers in keeping it simple. And that's been successful for us to date.
That makes sense. And I know, like in rentals, for me at least in Michigan, we don't like, if I buy a home that I'm going to make a long-term rental and it has a washer and dryer, I take those out. Like, those come out. We don't leave washer and dryer because it's just something else to fix and something it can break and something you're responsible for. Do you guys find that having the ability to do laundry, is that a bonus, or do you do the same thing? Do you rip out things that you don't have to have because they break down?
For the most part, we rip out things you don't have to have that you don't have to have. But in our space, laundry is a must. So all our units have laundry, just because we get travelers that stay anywhere from a couple of days to a lot of Airbnbs organically also turn into corporate housing. So somebody will book for 2 or 3 months at a time in our unit.
Oh, wow.
So for those type of guests, you just need to have you need to have wash and dries, and a lot of them are, even if they're staying for a couple of days, we're a stop as part of a longer trip. So one of the reasons that they choose an Airbnb is because it has a wash and dryer where they can get the coast back clean and going. So that's
sense.
one that we find quite necessary. But a lot of the other stuff, fire pits, things of that nature. If there's a fireplace, a wood burning fireplace, we purposefully don't provide the wood, the logs to throw in there just because.
I mean, do you do anything to seal those off, or do you just go, well, we're not going to provide wood, but if they go get wood, it's on them? Like that seems almost like a complication too, possibly.
Yeah, we just leave it open to them. If they want to do it, they can, and some choose to. To us, a fireplace turns more into an aesthetic than an actual like usable, piece of the home. But others, guests will do what they want to do eventually.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit how you evaluate. You mentioned it a little bit. You got into it for a second there about saying 60 to 70% occupancy and 30% it represents break even. When you're evaluating a house, like what are like maybe some 4 or 5 of the criteria that you like in real estate? It's for rentals, for example, right? People talk about the 2% rule or the 1% rule, which is basically your purchase and your renovation costs. Add those together times 2%, let's just say, and that's what rent you should get. And that's sort of like a rule of thumb or like to kind of get you in the ballpark kind of a thing. Is there a similar kind of evaluation that you do on a Airbnb?
Yeah, so for us, it's the 30% rule. If we believe that we can charge this nightly rate and that at 30 or so percent occupancy, it will get us a net positive result on a monthly basis, then those are properties that we want to work with.
Okay.
So that's one of the key evaluation points that we make.
So, so let me ask you this though. So for real estate, I can look at other houses that are similar to mine and I know it'll rent for $1,000 and I know I'm going to buy it for this and I can reasonably say the renovation will be this and it'll be $50,000 all in. That's 2%. How do you evaluate whether or not you'll have 30% occupancy? Like how do you pre-evaluate? You know what I mean? Before you take it on.
There's a couple of things that we do. One is you go to Airbnb yourself and you search for the area where the home is, and you can search by similar characteristics to get an idea what you should be able to generate on a nightly basis based on how the other units are performing.
Yep.
There's a couple of other resources online. There's a website called AirDNA, so AIRDNA.com, that basically does that on your behalf. Okay. It will tell you how each individual unit is performing and give you an estimate on how your particular unit would perform.
Okay.
So that's one avenue. There's another online resource called Mashvisor, MASHVISOR.com, Mashvisor.com. They do basically they look at homes that are available in MLS for sale.
Yeah.
And they using their analysis will tell you the type of return you can get on it as a short-term rental versus or a long-term rental as well.
Okay.
So those are two good evaluation points. Okay. There's also an Elliott and Me calculator that does a decent job of giving you an estimate of how much your unit should generate. So there's some online resources, but a lot of it honestly also comes down to gut feeling and what. This sounds crazy, but the way we've looked at it for the longest time is would I want to stay in this property and would I be willing to pay this amount of per day to stay here? There's just an internal check in a sense. Obviously you want to be as much data driven as possible, but if the numbers make sense from what you're seeing online, but then you would not feel comfortable staying at this property for whatever reason, it's probably smarter to pass because others would feel the same way and that will just probably turn into a dud long term.
Okay. So aesthetically, let's just say you evaluate something from the number standpoint and financially it makes sense. And I know there's like this gut check of like, would I stay here kind of a thing. I get that. But let's assume the neighborhood's great and the numbers make sense. Is there something you look for in the house itself, physical characteristics of the house itself that makes it more desirable to you as the investor, somebody who's running this business? I mean, in other words, like colonial versus ranch or tri-level split, a walkout basement. Like, is there anything that you look at aesthetically that makes a difference to you?
It's not necessarily somewhat aesthetic, but not necessarily. One, it's gotta be able to look good in pictures, right? Mm-hmm. Because the first impression will be that a guest sees will be a profile picture for the property, basically. So it's got to have something. It's got to have a couple of characteristics at least that catch your eye.
Okay.
And it can be something that's done relatively easily. We've suggested to a lot of clients we've worked with that would have a traditional red brick ranch that did not just wasn't visually appealing at first. But if you ask them to paint it gray and then put a lime green door, replace the door with a lime green door, and then it makes all the difference in the world.
What? Wait a minute. It makes all the difference. How? What do you mean? Like for better? It makes it better?
Correct. Because, when you look at the home and you see a red brick ranch home with a regular door, it doesn't excite you, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't catch your attention.
Yeah.
But if you have a newly painted gray ranch with a lime green door, at least, it's just your head just, your eyes naturally drawn to it. So,
I get that. It's funny to me. I thought the road you were going down there was that a red brick ranch would be desirable because, I don't know, it's traditional or it looks good. So you convinced the homeowners to paint their house gray and put a lime green door on it? Like that's something they'll do, or do you pay for that?
They pay for that. So, this one was the management where we manage on their behalf. So they asked us for recommendations, and that was one of our recommendations, and
Wow.
they paid for it. It made sense, and this was a $120,000 house that they put $5,000 of renovations in, and we're generating close to $3,500 a month in net revenue.
Wow.
So that was a easy decision to make.
That's funny. It's not intuitive though. I would have never thought that was a good thing to do. I would have actually thought it was a bad thing to do. A lime green door, like that's weird, but I get it. It makes it stand out. It makes it a little bit unique. What about like bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage? Does it matter? Do you like, in other words, is there any value? Like, what if you have a 2-bedroom house? It's in a good area. Is that worthwhile, or do you go 3 or more because it's just hard to find that specific person who will do 2?
Primarily, we go after 2 or more because with 1 bedrooms, you're technically also competing with hotels, right? So we typically go 2 or more, and honestly, we like to keep our bedroom count right about 2.5 on average. We only have a handful of units that have over 4 bedrooms, just because demand for those type of properties isn't as high. But when you can comparably rent a 2-bedroom out as a 1-bedroom hotel for the nightly rate wise, it's an easy choice for somebody, because there's a lot of couples that travel together or families, and it's just more convenient to have multiple bedrooms in one space as opposed to 2 hotel rooms.
Totally. So a 2-bedroom house though is not necessarily a bad thing. It's not something you would shy away from. You're fine with 2 bedrooms.
Not at all. Some of our best performing units are 2 bedrooms, or they would be duplexes or quadplexes, where it's 2 bedroom, 1 bath units per duplex side.
Interesting. So bathroom, same thing. Like a 1-bathroom house is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, 2 probably is better, but 1 isn't a big deal.
Exactly. I mean, as long as it's not the ratio should be 2 to 1 at a minimum. 2 bedrooms per 1 bathroom.
Gotcha.
3 or 4 bedroom with 1 bathroom, and just that's not conducive to a good experience. Just because guests will want their own bathroom time. Right.
Okay. Well, let's talk about location. Go ahead. I'm sorry. You finish your thought.
I do want to point this out. One big characteristic to look out for is just access. And ability to get to the front door of the unit. That the simpler that is, the better. Just because you want to make it simple for your guests to be able to get get inside the home. Yeah. We've had homes that were great, but you might have had to go through a community gate, which required calling, typing a certain code to get into the actual neighborhood, and then mark a certain place, and then walk and find a certain area where the lockbox is. The simpler it is, the better. A lot of the condominium buildings require you to have a fob, at which point that complicates things. So the easier it is for the guest to get to the front door, the better.
Okay. So I want to talk about location a little bit. You're in Charlotte, North Carolina area. If you're looking, or let's just talk to people who aren't in Charlotte, right? Like I'm in Michigan, and a lot of people, I don't know, I'm assuming that the perception of Detroit outside of Michigan is still pretty horrible, but let's just say people I want to get Airbnbs in Michigan, right? Is it wrong to think that most people who are going to want to stay in an Airbnb who are coming to Michigan probably have business in Detroit. So the Airbnb needs to be within reasonable distance of downtown Detroit, or is that not necessarily true when you're talking about proximity to like a major city in a state? You know what I'm saying? Is that something I should be, because I'll tell you, Detroit has a reputation that's well earned. We earned it, and really in downtown Detroit, there are apartments and lofts and condos that could be purchased for Airbnb that I think a lot of millennials and people who are traveling would think was very, very cool, but the homes and things that are surrounding some of the areas are not necessarily the best. Like, in other words, I guess what I'm getting is, do I need to be near downtown Detroit and figure that out and find the areas that are good and kind of focus on that? Or does it matter? Like, what if you're just in like you said, a smaller city, a suburb? Do those make good Airbnb? Like, how do you look at that when you're talking to people who don't live in your area?
Yeah, so when we talk to people, we primarily tell people to stay away from areas that are too far from urban areas based on our own experience, just because the volume of travelers that are coming there is probably significantly lower. Now, if it's a traditional vacation area, then of course that makes sense. If it's, somewhere remote in the mountains or something along those lines, that makes sense. But for an Airbnb, we would stay closer to as close to urban pockets as possible. It doesn't necessarily have to be, I don't know Detroit well at all. It doesn't necessarily have to be downtown Detroit, but I don't know if Detroit's got certain neighborhoods that are up and coming and have attractions that are popular with young professionals. Yep. For example, here in Charlotte, we have breweries everywhere. We have 60 breweries within like a 30-mile radius of Charlotte, and it's been really successful to find homes that are close to breweries, because that's where a lot of the travelers just go when they're in town, or little small neighborhood districts that are popular, have a good restaurant or food scene, or have any kind of event space that draws crowds. Those, for the most part, will all do really well.
So if you were 30 miles from Charlotte, but near a brewery or something kind of cool like that, you wouldn't shy away from that, even though it's far from Charlotte.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's about 15 miles outside of Charlotte, we have the U.S. National Whitewater Center. So it's a man-made whitewater rapid facility that the United States Olympic team uses for the training prior to the Olympics.
Okay.
That's been turned into basically an adventure park. They have zip lines, rock climbing. You can go whitewater rafting there, and then they also have pop-up breweries there and events almost every weekend. And we have properties around there, quite a bit outside of town, that do really well. One, the real estate around it is cheap. Okay. Cheaper than closer to downtown, and there's demand for it because there's a crowd that's always going and wants to be close to the Whitewater Center. So, as such, those are well-performing properties. You really, in a sense, have to be somewhat of an expert or have a good understanding of the area that you're in and what's drawing crowds.
Yeah. Okay. So as it relates to location, so that's like a macro location kind of a philosophy. When it comes down to like street level, micro location, is it important? Does it matter if it's kind of near, like on a main road, or like what if it's deep in a subdivision? This house that's kind of near a cool attraction, but you got to take 2 or 3 or 4 turns and go real deep into a subdivision that has 1,000 houses. Is that a problem?
None of those are problems. Even if you're in a somewhat sketchy area, but still transitioning area, as long as you market it that way, and you point that out in the in your description of your property, all that is okay, because you will have a certain clientele that is interested in exactly that. You don't
use the word sketchy, do you? You say literally.
No. We say transitioning. We say transitioning. Yeah. We have some properties in Baltimore, for example, that are by an old factory that's being redone, and we talk about that there's a historic factory in the backyard that's being worked on, that's being turned into X, Y, and Z. So we paint the picture. We don't tell them it's complete and there, and this monument that you want to visit, but we just let you know that it's there. We just we're transparent about what's happening. In a salesy way, basically. What
have you had a situation where you got involved in you signed a master lease for however long, and you start getting this property ready and marketing it, and have you had any that were just like duds, like, oh boy, we thought this was going to work out and this is never going to work. This is horrible. Have you had to go back and renegotiate or just get out of it? Or how does that work if it just, you make a bad call?
We've had a couple of bad calls. There was one property. It was the second property in the same building that we got in a great part of Charlotte. There's a neighborhood called Noda, which is just an artsy district, and it was the same property, same exact floor plan layout as another unit that we already had in the building that was doing extremely well. Well, they were just on opposite sides of the building. And the new property was closer to to a music venue that was next door. Okay. So music would play until 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, which was great for some guests, not so great for others.
Yeah.
So in that instance, we turned that into a long-term rental for basically a break-even price.
Okay.
We just kind of cut our losses there.
Okay. But you didn't go back to the owner. You just decided we're just going to kind of break even here and call it a day.
I mean, right. We honored our contract and found somebody that was okay with it for a long term.
Yeah.
And that's how it worked out.
Okay. So we're kind of nearing the end here, and I don't want to keep you all day because I know you've got things to do as well. But what would advice, if somebody was going to start off with Airbnb model, they wanted to do this, we can look at a couple different ways. How would you do it if you were going to start over again? That's kind of the traditional interview question. Or maybe you could just say here are some quick lessons learned and some quick high level things that if I was going to, if you had a sister or a brother, somebody said, "Hey, Amir, I need help with this." What would be the 10 minutes or 5 minutes of suggestions that you'd give them at a high level?
Yeah, the first thing I would do is honestly, I would go to Airbnb, look at the location where your property is, and just do some research to see. You can click on the listings that are already in the area, and you can see the general price point that they have. I mean, I'm guessing your audience is very sophisticated, so they'll be able to run a very, very quick analysis of understanding, will this be something that gets me the return that I'm looking for? By thumb, I would say you should expect to have about a 60% occupancy, right?
Okay.
So based on 60% occupancy and the nightly rate that you're seeing by comparable properties, you can get an idea of what you would be able to bring home on a monthly recurring revenue. Now, you have to understand that there's a lot of seasonality in the space. Depends on the market, but there's seasonality. In Charlotte, for example, January and February are slower months for us.
Yeah.
But July through August, July through October they almost do twice as well as January. So you just have to understand that it's not consistent. And then the other thing that I would do is the most important thing to the operation is understanding if you have cleaning resources available to you. Are there companies that focus on, or individuals that are focusing on short-term rental cleanings? I would do some research into that. I would recommend maybe doing it yourself initially, but I know that's not a cup of tea for everyone. So best place to honestly look for those are, a Google search to just Google Airbnb cleaning and then your city, or under Craigslist. Craigslist is a good option for that as well. Those would be the first two things that I would do, because cleaning is very important.
Yeah.
Obviously the numbers have to make sense. So I would do some initial research there, and then that cleaning resource is very important.
What is the difference, or what makes a good Airbnb cleaning service? What services do you want to make sure that they provide, or what are maybe things that wouldn't be intuitive? We all assume they're going to vacuum, they're going to dust, maybe wipe the windows down, clean the bathrooms and kitchen. But is there anything that it's not completely intuitive, or wasn't intuitive to you when you started and said, "Oh boy, we got to make sure this gets done"? Or how does that normally look?
Restocking, honestly, is the big one. They have to understand, you have to be on the same page with them. If the number of toilet paper rolls you want to keep per bathroom, and they have to have the ability to supply that on your behalf. And that could be multiple arrangements. Maybe you have an owner's closet that they can take from and replace items with.
Yeah.
But that attention to basically the consumables is the most important thing for a cleaner that's somewhat outside of the traditional home cleaner that comes by your house and cleans weekly or bi-weekly basis.
Right. What for as far as consumables like shampoo and soap and all that, you provide all of that kind of stuff. And what about like the kitchen?
Correct.
What do you provide inside of a kitchen? Just out of curiosity.
So just your basic cooking supplies.
Okay.
So pots, pans, glassware,
Okay.
silverware, things of that nature. Just basically, again, if you were there, do you have everything enough to make a dinner, a normal dinner?
Yeah.
Things of that nature, and then the basic spices. And that's really it.
Okay.
And then supplies to clean, basically. Dishwasher, detergent, things of that nature.
Right. Okay, cool. Now, you mentioned that one of the things that you did at some point is you brought in a CTO, I think you said, or a chief technical officer. And I know you guys provide some services and you do some things. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? What do you provide? What services do you guys provide folks, and how do you help them be successful?
Yeah, so we started off managing own properties. We still manage a portfolio of over 70 properties across 3 markets. So we're in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then we're also in Atlanta, where we have 6 properties, and we have a handful of properties in Savannah, Georgia as well. We have a team of 2 customer service reps for us, just basically 2 team members that cover 60 hours during the week on support calls in case guests have questions.
Okay.
That we can't answer, and that comes with volume of 70. But we and a cleaning team. So we have a cleaning team here in Charlotte. We have a cleaning team, which are contractors in both Atlanta and in Savannah. And those are our only operations in those 2 markets. And the way we're able to do that is we developed our own technology that I mentioned earlier to automate access to the property, thermostat control, Wi-Fi control. And soon we're rolling out an entertainment option where guests can log into their Netflix account, Hulu account ahead of arriving there. And then when they leave, they get logged out. So just to also save on the cable bill.
Yeah.
And 80% of travelers already have at least one streaming account. So we have recently rolled that out as an offering for other Airbnb hosts and property investors that are looking to get into the Airbnb space and want to optimize it and make it as passive as possible. So our solution, if you have a handful of properties, makes that a very passive offering for you.
Okay.
We also send you daily emails of all the cleanings that need to be done so that you can communicate that with your cleaner and with their code.
Okay.
And then if somebody wants to really build out an Airbnb operation, we allow you to do that as well, because we optimize so much of the work that's necessary around the actual property itself. So we built that out, rolled that out a couple of months ago. And honestly, we went after traditional property managers to get them to use the service, but we've seen a lot more interest just from property investors.
Yeah.
We have individuals, we just talked to an individual on Friday that was getting a handful of properties in Ohio and in Florida, and he was utilizing our technology just to manage them remotely. He had a cleaning team that he found there, and with our technology was able to basically set and forget it and make it as passive as possible, which is really exciting for us, because for us we want to enable others to do what we do, but then we also want to help the guests have a consistent experience staying at homes, because that's just as important, because it'll only grow the adoption of short-term rentals by an Airbnb of travelers, which will be net positive for all of us.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. So if people want to get a hold of you and inquire about this technology, and they want to build out this Airbnb model, how can they get a hold of you, and what's the best method to kind of get some more information about that?
Yeah, if you want to learn more about us, you can go to our website. It's rabbu.com, rabbu.com. Okay. And if you I'm an open book when it comes to Airbnb. So if you want to learn anything more about the space, I'm happy to make some time. You can email me directly at emir@rabbu.com, emir@rabbu.com. I love this space. I see a great potential in it. We just turned our primary home. So I mentioned we had a detached garage.
Yeah.
We've not turned the primary home into an Airbnb as well, and purchased a second home here in town. And our first home is now covering both mortgages. So
wow,
the space makes a lot of sense.
That's awesome.
The other things that we've seen from investors, just real quick, is that Airbnb allows you to acquire a type of property that you wouldn't usually get because you can still get your minimum ROI. So a lot of investors, you have a threshold of how much they're willing to pay for a home based on the ROI they're looking to get. Because of the higher revenue you can generate from Airbnb, so we've seen a lot of investors purchase homes that were twice the price than their previous maximum was.
That's amazing.
So,
I just had one random question. This is so not the way you end an interview, but I'm going to open up another chapter here. What is the biggest objection you get from homeowners if you approach them about this model? Like, what is the number one thing that they shoot back at you to try to, whatever, say it's not going to work or they don't want to do it?
It's just a fear of the unknown. Because, just like with anything you hear in the news, you hear more about the negatives than the positives, right? Yeah. So and one of the reasons I'm open to these conversations is to educate people on the opportunity that's out there. Yeah. So it's the fear of the unknown. They like the idea. It sounds sexy. I mean, you mentioned yourself, Mike, you've been wanting to do it, but you just haven't had the information to get it to make that jump yet. Right. So that's been really the biggest pushback, and that's what that's what we want to help solve. Okay. That's awesome, man. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time very much. You've been super open and very transparent, and that's super cool of you. Again, if people want to learn more, they can go to rabbu.com. It's rabbu.com or amir@rabbu.com if you want to reach out directly to him. I know I will be reaching out to you, and this isn't just like an interview like thing you say to be really gracious, but I literally am going to be reaching out because this is something I want to build out this year. So awesome. Appreciate your time, man. You've been super informative and helpful, and I just appreciate it. Of course, happy to help, and thanks for having me on, Mike. Really appreciate it. Absolutely, man. Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I enjoyed being a part of it as well. I was being completely honest. This is something that I'm very interested in. I'm going to be reaching out to Amir and talking to him, not only about how he's done this more and get a little bit more granular with my situation and where I'm located, but also his technology and the services that he provides to make this a little bit easier for folks who want to get involved. So I'm super excited that I had him on. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. And again, get out there and make things happen, guys. I mean, the bottom line here, the reason I bring people in like this is I want to encourage you and inspire you and show you that this is very doable. I mean, Amir got 70 units that he's Airbnb-ing, and he doesn't own any of them. He didn't have to buy any of them, right? So there's ways you can do this. Money shouldn't be an issue. Time shouldn't be an issue. Like, you can figure this out. So get out there and get it going. There's no way you're going to get your business off the ground or take it to the next level unless you get out there and just start, guys. That's the name of the program, and there's a reason for that. I know that the most important thing is to just start. So get out there and make it happen.